So the first problem we have here is that the food is filling up on this section here, on the column, not the, I'm sorry, on the rows, not the column. And the reason for that is because of our call to array empty, right? So what we're sending to empty is the x position and then the y position. And then we're using that x position and y position on the get empty to get the place in the grid on the x and the y. But if you remember, the get takes in row column, right? And row is y and column is x, right? So what we really should be calling this is a row column, like that, right? And we should be coming over here and saying row comma column. And if we're taking in row first and column next on the array empty, then we should be taking in the ry, because the y is the row and the x is the column, right? So a little bit confusing there. And now if we go ahead and run it, we get this, right? So same problem, different context, or like one step closer. And that's because we got it on the first row, right? As it should be. The next problem here is if you take a look at the dots being filled in, they should be filling in every 10 times a second, right? So every 100 milliseconds. But if you see when it starts to fill up, there's a delay. Okay, do you see that? There's like a delay, right? And the reason for the delay is because it's randomly choosing x and y locations for the food, but those random locations are on top of previous foods. Right, so we get like delay in the way that our first row is being filled in. And so the reason for that is because when we lay down the food, we're not updating the new grid with it being full at that location. So let's come down here, and right here we're laying down the food. So what we can do, instead of doing this, which is setting, this is setting the x and the y, right? These need to be flipped because the set takes in row and then column, and row is the y and column is the x. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and replace that with this, which is setting the 0 row with the column, the x, right? Get index of the x with 0, which means it's full. And for this to be like actually usable when we don't use just the first row, we're going to also put get y right here, right? And then we're going to print out the grid, the first row of the grid right over here, so we could see it filling up. Okay, so I think it's working correctly now. Like, let me go ahead and take out that print, and we can see it, that it will be filling up 1 every 100 milliseconds, right? Let's do it again. So now the grid is being updated based on the red food being placed on the screen. So that's good. The only problem here left is the spaces up here in the front, right? And so what I did to figure that out is I went ahead and printed out the first row right after I filled up the grid with ones, right? And they had all ones in them, okay? And then I printed it right down here at the end of our program, and it had zeros in the front of it. Okay, so then I was thinking like, oh, maybe it's one of these timers that is causing that to happen, and after searching through them I found that none of them were adjusting the values of the grid on the first 10 spaces. And then another student actually pointed out that this was doing it. Okay? Now I don't know why this is here. I think it might have been, yeah, I'm not sure why this is here, but I think this is when we thought that the grid was, when we thought the grid was 10 by 10 and we wanted to fill the first row with zeros, right, or something like that. So it must have been left here from what we were doing earlier. So if I go ahead and delete that, then this front portion of the grid will not be set to 0, and we will get a full the full row filled with food, right, in the right time. So now that we got that going, well, we could take away this and the print grid, and we are good to go, and our food is not going to and our food is not going to. Ooh, we got an infinite loop here somewhere. Ooh, let's see, what's that all about? Oh, I hope I can figure out this last little bit before the bell rings. If the page will ever load. Okay, well, the page isn't loading, so I guess we could take a look at that last problem when we come in tomorrow.